If you're running an organization that's, core to how our society functions, keeping the lights on, moving goods, processing huge amounts of data, you're already painfully aware of this. Our reliance on digital systems has become our single biggest vulnerability.
Absolutely. The global cyber threats are just escalating, and Europe's response well, it's serious binding legislation.
And that's what we're diving into today. The EU's big answer, the NIS2 directive, and more specifically, how it translates into Dutch law, the Cyberbeveiligingswet, or CISO.
Right. And this isn't just a minor update.
No, it's a massive regulatory shift. It's going to fundamentally change how organizations in the Netherlands manage risk. So our mission here is for you, the learner. We're cutting through all the complexity. We want to get to the strategic takeaways. Who is covered? What are the core obligations? And maybe most importantly, when does that compliance clock really start ticking?
That urgency is the key thing. NIS2, the official directive 2022-5555, it's the EU's answer to the patchwork of security standards we had under the old NIS1.
Which is really inconsistent across different countries.
Exactly. Very inconsistently interpreted. So the goal now is to set a high common level of digital and economic resilience across the entire bloc. The CBU, the Cyberbeveiligingwet, is the Dutch vehicle for this change. It's replacing the older law, the liability, which was, frankly, far less comprehensive and just didn't have the teeth that NIS2 now provides.
It's a lot to take in. And for organizations just now realizing they're in scope, managing this kind of specific technical change, it's a huge undertaking.
It is.
Mapping out all these new requirements from technical controls all the way to governance mandates that can burn through months of staff time. Which is why we're really grateful for the support of tools like those at www.compliancehub.wiki and www.cisomarketplace.com. They're designed to give security pros and executives a clear roadmap through these new demands. So let's jump right in. The first, and I think for many the most confusing, hurdle is scope. Who is actually covered?
The scope is where NIS2 makes its biggest impact. Under NIS1, organizations had to be specifically designated by national authorities. It was a bit cumbersome.
And subjective, I'd imagine.
Very. So the new law gets rid of most of that.
So how do you know if you're covered now? What's the new system?
It's a combination of two criteria. First, sectoral criticality, so it's the industry you're in. And second, the size cap rule. If you operate in one of those critical sectors and you meet the minimum size thresholds, you are automatically in scope. The idea was to just drastically expand coverage.
And make sure there are no critical gaps left.
Exactly.
Okay, so this expansion creates two new categories of regulated entities. And this is important because they face very different levels of supervision.
That's right. We have a tiered system, and it's based on their systemic impact and, of course, their size. The first tier is essential entities, or EEs. These are your large organizations. Think over 250 employees or more than 50 million euros in annual turnover.
And they're in the really critical sectors, right? The ones listed in Annex N.
Precisely. Energy, transport, banking, financial market infrastructure, health, public administration. The things we absolutely cannot live without. And because a disruption there would have a severe impact on the entire country, EEs face active, proactive supervision.
Proactive supervision. So that means they're getting routine checkups, essentially.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Think of it like a hospital getting constant health inspections. The supervisory authority can and will conduct routine audits without any specific trigger. They are actively looking for compliance gaps.
Okay, so that's the top tier. What about the second one?
The second tier is important entities, or IEs. These are your medium-sized organizations. Generally, that means at least 50 employees or turnover of more than 10 million euros. They operate in the other critical sectors listed in Annex 2, and this is where you see a lot of the expansion.
Like what kind of sectors are we talking about here?
We're talking digital providers, postal and courier services, food production and distribution, research institutions, and even specific types of critical manufacturing.
That manufacturing piece is huge. So if I'm, say, a port operator, I'm automatically an essential entity because of my sector. But if I'm a high-tech machine manufacturer, it's my size that determines if I'm an important entity. Is that right?
That is precisely the mechanism. And the supervision for IEs is different. It's reactive.
Meaning they only get audited if something goes wrong.
Pretty much. An audit would typically be triggered by a major security incident, or if there's some other clear indication of non-compliance reported to the regulator. No routine scheduled inspections for them.
That still seems like a huge new burden for those mid-sized companies, especially in manufacturing that might never have had this level of regulation before.
It is, but the net is cast even wider than that. This is what we're calling the regulatory domino effect.
Okay, let's unpack that. So even if a smaller company is below all the official size and sector caps, they can still get pulled into this. How?
It's built into one of the core obligations, the Zorgplicht, or duty of care, which is placed on the big guys, the essential entities. E's are now required by law to audit, to risk assess, and to manage the security of their entire supply chain. That includes all their external suppliers and service providers.
So if I'm a major national utility, an essential entity, and I use a small local software company for some maintenance, I can't just hope they have good security. I have to enforce it.
You have to enforce it contractually. That utility will just write NIS2 level security requirements, things like mandatory pen testing, specific encryption standards, MFA. They'll write it directly into their supplier contracts.
And suddenly that small company, even with fewer than 50 employees, has to comply with NIS2 standards just to keep their contract.
Just to stay in business, it's a functional compulsion.
The goal is systemic resilience then, making sure a breach at the smallest link doesn't take down the whole chain.
That's the idea. A continuous cycle of security requirements flowing through the entire ecosystem.
All right, let's talk about the timeline. This is causing a lot of confusion for CISOs right now. The EU deadline for transposition was October 17th, 2024. Did the Netherlands make it?
No, they did not. The Dutch government formally announced they would miss that deadline.
Why the delay?
It's a complex piece of legislation to transpose into the CBDE, and they're trying to implement it alongside another directive, the CER, which is about physical resilience. So they're aligning two massive new laws at once.
So what's the actual date we should all have circled on our calendars?
The current official projection is that the CBDE will enter into force in the second quarter of 2026. And that means until that happens, the new obligations, the duty of care, the duty to report, they're not formally in effect. The old WIBNY law is still in place for those who are already covered by it.
But, and this is a huge but, this delay is absolutely not a vacation. This is a strategic gift of time.
Absolutely. The government, the Rijksoverheid, is being very clear. Do not wait. The cyber risks themselves exist right now.
So if you have a major incident in 2025, before the law is active, and you've done nothing to prepare based on these known requirements,
it could raise some very serious questions about managerial due diligence.
it sounds like ignoring the known requirements is just taking on a huge operational and maybe even legal negligence risk even before the law is formally on the books.
Precisely. You can't really claim ignorance once the standard of care has been so publicly laid out, and there's an immediate right people should know about. If your organization will be covered by the law, you are already entitled to get advice and assistance from a computer security incident response team, a CRT, if you have an incident.
So that support is available right now.
Yes, that support mechanism is already active.
Let's get into the substance of the law then. The three big mandatory pillars: Zorgplicht, duty of care; Meldplicht, duty to report; and Registryplicht, registration. Let's start with that foundational duty of care.
The Zorgplicht is really where the operational rubber meets the road. It requires you to do a comprehensive risk assessment of your systems and then implement appropriate and proportionate security measures.
Technical, operational, organizational, the whole shebang.
Yes, it's all about safeguarding integrity, availability, and confidentiality.
And the law is pretty specific about what appropriate means, listing 10 minimum risk management measures. These are the 10 CBU pillars. This isn't a suggestion, it's a checklist, right?
It's a mandatory checklist. And a few of them represent a really significant operational lift for most organizations.
Let's walk through the big ones.
Okay, first is risk analysis. This means documented periodic risk assessments. And crucially, security policies that are formally approved by the management body. That connects to governance, which we'll get to later.
Okay.
Then you have business continuity. You need tested, verified plans for disaster recovery, crisis management, and the law explicitly calls out robust backup management.
We already touched on number 3, which is the big headache for many: supply chain security. That contractual due diligence is going to take a huge effort from legal, procurement, and IT.
It absolutely will. But another huge one is testing and auditing. That's measure 6. It requires verifiable proof that your security is effective.
And the law specifically mentions things like penetration testing and security audits.
It does, which I think has a clear strategic implication.
It forces you into a continuous compliance model. You can't just do a single audit once a year. You need ongoing, demonstrable proof that your controls actually work.
Correct. And then there's a final group that's all about the human and access side: HR security, access control, and multi-factor authentication, MFA.
Ah, the MFA mandate.
Yes, robust identity and access policies, asset management, and the mandatory use of multi-factor authentication or other secure solutions.
That's a game changer, especially for, say, operational technology, OT environments, which have historically lagged way behind corporate IT on basic identity controls. Now it's a legal requirement.
It sets a very high but very necessary bar.
Okay, so Pillar 2, the duty to report, the meld plate.
This is where the clock creates incredible operational stress. You have to report any significant incident on a very strict timeline.
And how is significant defined?
Generally, it's anything that causes or could cause severe operational disruption or substantial financial loss.
And the timeline is unforgiving.
It's the 247-230 rule. Within 24 hours of becoming aware of an incident, you have to submit an initial report and early warning to the National Authority and the CSA-8.
24 hours is nothing. In the middle of the chaos of an attack, you have to file a report.
You do, and then the pressure just mounts. Within 72 hours, you need to provide a detailed update.
With what?
A full assessment of the severity, the impact, and any known indicators of compromise or IOCs to help protect others. This means your incident response team needs pre-approved triage protocols ready to go.
It's hard enough just to contain a breach, let alone generate regulatory reports under that kind of pressure.
And you're not done yet. Within 1 month, a final report is due. This needs the root cause analysis, the final impact assessment, and all the mitigation measures you took.
Trying to do a full root cause analysis on a sophisticated attack in 30 days is a monumental task.
Most organizations are not prepared for that today.
And the third pillar is simpler.
Much simpler, but important for visibility. The registration obligation, registrate plict, all covered entities just have to register in a national database run by the NCSC. It gives the authorities a clear map of who falls under the law.
Okay, now we get to what I think is the most profound change in the CBW, the focus on personal accountability.
Governance.
This law explicitly takes cybersecurity out of the server room and puts it in the boardroom.
That's the perfect way to describe it. It's driven by Article 20 of the directive, which assigns direct responsibility not to the CISO, but to the management body, the board, the senior leadership.
And what does that responsibility entail?
They have to actively approve the organization's risk management measures, including the supply chain policy, and they must supervise the execution. They can't just delegate it and forget about it.
It's like how they're held accountable for financial reporting. They have to sign off. They own it.
That's the perfect analogy. And here's the kicker. The law mandates that directors undergo specific training to acquire sufficient knowledge about cyber risks.
So they have to be educated.
They have to be. And that training requirement is the smoking gun for personal liability.
Why is this so powerful?
Because a failure to provide that training, or for the directors to attend it, is a direct, auditable violation of the law. Management has to be able to prove they're competent to oversee the security strategy. It makes it an enforceable fiduciary duty.
You are legally required to be informed.
Exactly.
And if you fail in that duty, the penalties are enormous, comparable to GDPR.
They are severe. For essential entities, we're talking fines up to the higher of 10 million euros or 2% of global annual turnover.
2% of global turnover.
Yes. For important entities, it's up to the higher of 7 million euros or 1.4% of global turnover. That's a number that will get the board's attention.
And it's not just the company on the hook. There's personal liability, too.
Absolutely. Article 32.6 is very clear. Individual directors can be held personally liable for negligence. The regulator can hit them with fines and even potentially temporary bans from holding executive positions.
So the mandatory training, the executive oversight, the threat of personal sanctions, it completely reframes risk management at the highest level.
It does.
So given that we have this strategic delay, this window until Q2 2026, what should organizations be doing right now in 2025?
The immediate focus has to be on the strategic and governance phase. Use this time to figure out your baseline and get that board buy-in. The government has already provided tools to help with this, and using them now creates a documented, verifiable record of you taking reasonable measures.
What are the tools?
First, the RDI NIS2 self-assessment tool. This is the formal way to confirm if you fall under the CBW and what your classification is. Essential or important, don't guess. Use the tool.
And once you know you're in scope, you need to figure out where your gaps are.
That's where the NIS2 quick scan comes in. It's designed for your IT and security specialists. It helps you map your existing controls against those 10 Zorg-plicked measures and gives you concrete advice on what to fix.
So the message is clear. Use this delay to get your governance house in order, not to perfect every technical implementation.
Exactly.
Finalize your risk decisions, get board approval on new policies, start on your supply chain due diligence, and get that executive training done now.
You can achieve verifiable compliance without the immediate pressure of a regulator breathing down your neck. Getting the governance right is the hardest part, and this is the perfect time to do it.
So at the end of the day, the Cyberbeveiligingwet demands a unified resilience strategy. Cybersecurity is now fully integrated with business continuity, and it's governed from the very top of the organization.
It is. And if you connect this back to that huge accountability shift, it raises a really interesting question for the future.
Which is?
Well, with Article 20 mandating board-level approval and supervision, how quickly are we going to see directors and officers' insurance D&O policies start reflecting the specific quantifiable risk of SPDU noncompliance?
So will your premiums go up if your board hasn't done the mandatory training?
Exactly. What will that required evidence of training mean for executive liability coverage? That liability shift is now measurable and it's enforceable, and the insurance market will react to that.
A fascinating thought to explore as you build out your 2026 compliance roadmap. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Dutch cybersecurity revolution. And we thank our sponsors, www.compliancehub.wiki and www.cisomarketplace.com, for supporting these essential explorations. We'll talk to you next time.